Hello and good afternoon, and you're all very welcome to the Spotlight on Humanities, brought to you today with the help of the Careers Office in IADT, and I'm delighted to be emceeing this event. My name is Dr. Kevin Wallace. I'm Head of Department of Humanities and Arts Management here at IADT, and I'm joined by three graduates, all from Arts Management, Michelle McCarthy, Eamonn Crowe, and Declan Smyth. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to chat to our panelists here about what it's like to graduate from a humanities area degree, what are the kind of skills you gain from studying that degree, and how do you bring those to bear best in the workplace, as well as their own journeys from graduate to where they are today. So, Michelle, you're first on my screen. Maybe you'll introduce yourself and where you're working and your journey.
Yeah, hi. Good morning from New York. My name is Michelle McCarthy, and I am the Director of Marketing Strategy for our live business at Madison Square Garden.
Brilliant. Thanks, Michelle. And Eamonn.
Hey, everybody. I'm Eamonn Crowe. I'm a graduate of Arts Management from 2011. I am out working now. I'm actually assistant lecturer part-time in IADT in Business Humanities and some of the classes over in FACT. And I also am partner in a restaurant company called Red Torch Ginger.
Thanks, Eamonn. And Declan, maybe introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, everybody. Declan Smyth is my name. I'm an independent business arts consultant working in Ireland in the ever-expanding arts and culture arena. I'm a graduate of IADT, and I graduated back in 2018.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Declan. Unfortunately, we can't be joined by one of our fourth member of the panel, Niamh Devereux, who's a graduate of EMCS, English Media and Cultural Studies. But you can read about Niamh's journey and her story on our website. Okay, well, what we'll start with or start a little bit to talk about everyone's journey after the degree and how you bring your knowledge and skills from that to bear in the workplace. Well, I suppose the first thing I'd like to ask is we all make mistakes. So what are the kind of mistakes that you learned most from in your career so far?
I don't think I've made any mistakes, honestly, Kevin. I don't think there have been mistakes necessarily on my side. I definitely think there have been a lot of learning moments. And, you know, moving from positions to position is always risky. But I guess you always have a goal in mind of like where you want to end up or where you're trying to get to. So I think there's definitely a lot of fumbling and learning moments again, I would say, during that time. I think you can always look back and say they're mistakes, but they're also what got you to where you are. So I never tried to look at them as mistakes, more as like, well, if that didn't happen, then this wouldn't have happened. So yeah, I think maybe not listening to people enough or not taking advice that at the time you thought you knew better. But I think, yeah, again, I wouldn't see different things as mistakes, more as like learnings.
That's great.
I really like where Michelle went with that. I think it's really important in phrasing. You know, it's like they say there's no such thing as failure so long as you're trying. Yeah, mistakes. We don't always make mistakes. Sometimes things just go wrong. Things go wrong, okay? And I like to think of when things go wrong, how I feel in the moment, because things have gone wrong lots of times for me, and they have been the best learning that I've done. You know, it is one thing learning when you're in college learning things, you're given pointers, you know, and how to kind of steer things right in an ideal situation. But really, sometimes the SHIT hits the fan. And there you go, they are learning moments. And I like to describe this when people ask me questions about kind of scars. Things go wrong and you have to figure out how best to get out of them. You are left with these kind of scars. You remember how they felt at the time. And you tend to recognize when things are coming at you the next time, because your Harry Potter scar kind of starts to twitch. You kind of go, oh God, I can't end up here again. What did I do last time? And those scars tend to guide you along with your gut on how to best deal with things as they happen again and again and again. Because, you know, I'm very honest, you can do everything right and be prepared for most, but sometimes the SHIT does hit the fan, and that's why we're there, I guess, this level, to try and make judgments.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. And if I was going to ask you now, what would you go back and tell yourself when you were starting your degree or starting your studies at IADT? What kind of things would you tell yourself that you need to be prepared for, or that you need to focus on a little bit more? Declan, did you want to? Sorry.
I suppose I would have had a long-standing career in both the public, private sector and financial services before I entered IADT. And my reason for doing the degree, first of all, was to certainly upskill myself. I always had a passion for arts and culture, even in my working life over the years. So ultimately, when I came out with my degree, I wanted to set up on my own and become an independent consultant within the industry. And just going back to the mistake piece, like the other panelists have said, no matter how prepared you are to do anything, and I know this from experience, you can have your plan set out, focus, whatever, and things will go wrong. And when they do go wrong, you correct them as best you can and you learn from it. And I found that even though I had a lot of experience behind me in business, I was still learning as I set up my own business in this industry. So there was many times when I was with my back to the wall, this is not happening, this should happen, trying to get the business aspect of the business set up, how you have to deal with regulatory and all of those issues, and all of that. But it's all a learning curve. And I suppose the initial question, Kevin, you're asking me there was around more of the what I would do differently to what would I say to my younger self? Yeah. Well, in my case, I would have had to put together a business model for me. And I felt, as I look back, the business model was a little bit too expansionary, in that I was trying to do a little bit too much, covering, let's say, organizations within the industry and also individual artists within the industry. So over a period of time, and before COVID hit, I narrowed it down to only for me to deal with individual artists. So I felt from that point of view, I was trying to cover too much initially in the business model, and that would be difficult for somebody on their own, working independently. But again, let's say if you take the word mistakes, I would see mistakes and likewise things going wrong. These are challenges that present themselves to us, and you deal with the challenge, you move on, and no doubt you'll find another challenge coming at you, but it's all the learning process as you go through.
Okay, that's great. And Michelle or Eamonn, what kind of things would you say to your younger self when you were starting out?
Sure.
I mean, I would go back to listening more. I feel like I got a lot of good advice over the years, and I guess it's just for, you know, being young and learning yourself, and you think you know better. Somebody's trying to help you, and you don't necessarily want to heed their advice, and in the long, you know, you end up learning yourself the hard way anyway. But I could have probably made my life a lot easier by taking some advice from a lot of people who wanted to help. I guess it was challenging because this would have been 15 years ago now. You know, 20 years ago when I originally finished secondary school, to get into what I wanted to get into the music industry. There was no course, there was no anything or kind of guidance. So a lot of people, there were a lot of naysayers, you know, who want to discourage you. You know, you should just do this and you should just give up on that. And I ended up doing a music degree to begin with, because, you know, you can always be a music teacher and you can fall back on that, which I never wanted to be. But so I ended up going actually down that path first before I got to IADT. But again, there was a lot of advice along the way from people who were trying to help, not necessarily great advice, but I felt I could have done a better job of taking it on board and maybe making my life easier in the long run.
Brilliant. And Eamonn?
What I would tell myself back then was to be patient. I had this, I kind of felt that when I finished or I graduated, that the world was going to open up for me and I was going to be successful almost immediately, when in fact I finished in 2011 from IADT, and it was right in the middle of that bad, most recent recession. There was no open doors. I hadn't a developed network at the time, which I'm pushed, based on that experience, I tend to push people now to begin building networks as soon as they hit college, so that they can use them as soon as they're finished, rather than waiting until they're finished to start building their network. But I would have had patience, or I would have said to have patience, that, you know, there's a lot still to achieve, but there's still a lot to do once you get out of college on the journey to whatever it is you're trying to be successful in. There's lots more still to learn, as Declan had already said. You know, you're going to continue to learn for a long time, but that just to be realistic in your expectations, that you finish, and it's the day you finish your degree kind of is when the real work, not the real work, sorry, that the other work kind of starts. You know, that they're both, one is theory, but then you have to kind of get this practical side of things also in. And the trick is to use the theory, which is lots of tips and pointers, marry it up with the practical, and then they need to fuse together in order to make you who you are and to make you a valuable asset to yourself and to other people professionally. I went to 2011 and I saw it was quite difficult. I decided to jump back in and I did my postgrad in entertainment law, DIT. And then I left DIT in 2012, which wasn't much better than 2011. And all the doors were closed. And I thought in my head at the time, I remember it was quite crushing because I was naive. And I thought that, look, I'm up here at level 9 now. And what more could I possibly do in order to get doors open or opportunities for me? And I didn't have the opportunities. And the reason why I ended up in the area that I ended up in is because the job that I was able to get at the time, I ditched my CV because it wasn't working for me, whatever I was doing at the time. And I became a kitchen porter. And the amount that I learned from being a kitchen porter, I actually don't give enough credit to still out loud. That's what I did. And then I ended up in a whole new industry that I hadn't really considered. And kind of, I don't know if we talk about that later, but it was just about being patient and understanding that, you know, where you think you're in and you're about to graduate from college and you think you know where you're going to be. But the reality is that nobody ends up where they think they're going to end up. It chops and changes so much based on opportunity and new things that you learn, just to be open to the change. I wish I knew that back then, and it wasn't so hard on myself for not, you know, that's what I would have said.
Well, do you know, Eamonn, we have a few questions in for each of you. What I might do is I might start with the one for you, which is asking to elaborate a little bit more on how you actually got started in the restaurant business. So,
okay, great. So I had just come out of, I got my postgrad in entertainment law and tried to go out to the world, and when dropping in CVs, I wasn't being too picky because I just needed to earn money at that time because I was very close to the breadline and trying to survive in a recession like everybody. And I was taking any job that I could get, but I was even finding it difficult to get any job. And I went for an interview for it's not there now, but it was a well-known men's store on Grafton Street. And it was said to me, "Oof, you studied law, you studied employment law. God, I couldn't say boo around you, you'd have me up in the labour court." And I was 23, 24 at the time, and I was just, that was crushing to me. How could somebody say that to me after I'm trying so hard to do well, that I'm not going to give it to you because you've done too much and I couldn't say boo around you? I remember that was an awakening moment for me. It made me grow up very quickly in my search for work, and I ended up ditching the CV. I had another experience similar to that where somebody else went, "Oh, why do you want this? You're not going to be here long." And I was like, "No, I'm looking for a job. I have bills to pay, and I'm a good worker." But I was getting no's. So I ditched the CV and I went into this brand new business that had opened up, and new businesses weren't opening up. I went into this business without a CV, recognized somebody who worked there, and said, "Look, I really need a job." And they said, "Okay, let me introduce you to the owner." And they said, "Look, have you any experience?" I said, "No." And they said, "Right, well, look, it's they literally said to me, "a dish pig job." This is what some people refer to them, and it's quite derogatory. It's a dish pig job. And I was like, "I'll take it." And I went in and I started doing the job. And that's how I ended up in the industry. You know, it was 3 weeks washing the dishes, learned a lot there. And then I was asked, they got chatting to me, and then I ended up being asked to be manager. And within 6 months, actually, there was opportunity where they were like, "Look, we were looking for a group operations manager." Then I got the chance to show my CV. And then they were less intimidated, and they were like, "Okay, do this." So I ended up opening a number of businesses for a company. It was called Canoodle at the time. I opened 5 or 6 places for them over the next 2 years, expanded the franchise, learned a lot about franchise development and business, and getting the chance to open businesses for other people, right? Learning how to open businesses, but on other people's dime, which was invaluable. All the mistakes with other people's money, which, you know, I don't mean to be cynical, but you don't really get the opportunity to do that. I got to make mistakes with other people's money. I got to learn hard lessons with other people's money. But the overall impression was that a fair job was being done, so I was allowed to continue. So I stayed there for 2 years. Then I was very hard work. I was finding loads of challenges. I had about 75 staff working under me then at the age of 24, 25. That was very challenging. A lot of them older than me. I found huge challenges in trying to manage people older than me, even though I had all of the tools from the law, from everything. But it was the application and the emotional intelligence of trying to deal with people, and also understanding that people didn't want me, 25-year-old, managing them. That was also a hard lesson to learn, but it was good over time. So I ended up leaving that business and going traveling for a year, came back, and then went to work for a restaurant business that was just new called Red Torch Ginger. And within 9 months, I had been approached to open their second place. I opened that actually, and I went in as partner on it. And then we've just opened the third one, of which I'm partner on now, in Sandyford last week. Kind of the rest is history. I did get approached by head of department a few years ago based on, I'm pretty much keeping LinkedIn updated, etc. I'm a very big fan of networking and LinkedIn, as I've said before. And somebody got in touch with me and said, "We've been watching your story. Would you come in and do a few sessions with students?" Which I did. And then the rest is history. I became a lecturer. I teach business in the business and law department, and I also teach entrepreneurship over to creative practitioners in the photography department. And I just love it. I've also recently joined the EDI team, teaching on the masters in EDI. Love it. Very challenging. Learning as I go. As Richard Branson's favorite thing to do. Start doing it and learn it as you do it. It's a phenomenal ride. The teaching on the masters. I teach the legal framework and the masters of equality in business. Yeah, that's me.
Brilliant. Thanks, Eamonn. There's lots of segues there that we might link in with some of the questions that are coming in. But I've got one from Michelle, and the question is, can you tell us a little bit about the hiring process and the different pathways about getting into your business and the kind of position you're in?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I was like, I mean, again, it's always like a tangled web to try and get where you're going, but I do credit IADT and the course that I did there with a lot of kind of pointing me in the right direction of where I wanted to go. And I know before we started this, we talked about Mary Ryan, God love her, and she was actually the one who kind of pointed me in the direction of working on festivals, and which would have never been something that would have, occurred to me, or I wouldn't have gone down that path. Which kind of took me to work for Cork Midsummer Festival on the 6-month program. So I moved back to Cork for 6 months and worked there. Then because of that, and because of networking, which is a key to our business and probably most businesses, ended up working for, Electric Picnic and St. Patrick's Festival and Castlepalooza and the Festival World Cultures Office. So like got to touch so much, because each of those festivals has a super lean team, so you get to touch so many different areas. So we were working on marketing partnerships and marketing and PR and picking people up at the airport and forgetting people at the airport, which I also have done at 2 o'clock in the morning. And so you get like a really great hands-on experience, and you also get to meet a lot of amazing people. And I think the key, I would say, over my career to date has always been networking, always been like, don't close any door, don't burn bridges, no matter how bad things are when you're leaving a position or while you're out of position. I think it's always, those relationships will always come back around. Even when I'm here, like, you would think that it would be impossible to get in touch with anyone. I'm in the US, I work in the North American market, but you see the same people all the time. And I've seen the same people all the time for the length of time I've been here. I've seen interns come, I've seen them leave, go to other companies, and then ended up working with them on like marketing strategy for shows. So I would say networking is definitely 101. And there, I think, and I don't know if anybody else experienced this, but when you are going through the interview process and you're, for whatever position it might be, like there were definitely positions that or jobs that I had that I was kind of embarrassed about. But when I look back now, I'm like, that's really what made me, having the hustle and having willingness to just roll up your sleeves and do whatever job. Like I worked for free for so many people. Like I worked for free in so many offices, on site at festivals, at different things. And I just think it's that willingness. And even when you go in and you talk about your experience in an interview, I think that you're able to speak to so many different areas, I think definitely helped me. And also the knowledge of like different festivals, different people working in agencies. Like keep in mind, I moved to New York. I didn't know anybody. I didn't have any connections. I didn't know what the radio stations were in New York City, which at the time was huge. So, I mean, that was a whole work project, and it sounds like a menial thing, but when you go back to the hiring process for any job, I'm like constantly on their website, finding out who works there, calling people who work there. Can we get a coffee? Can I just have an informational discussion with you, whether it's on the phone or in person? And I don't remember, and maybe I didn't have the audacity when I was in Ireland, but I don't remember some people in the industry being as open to that. But I feel like they are here. Like it's just a thing that anybody, and it's probably changed too over the last 15 years. But I thought that was interesting when I moved here. People who were very high up in the music industry were open to having conversations with nobodies, which I think helped. So I would say hustle. Sorry, this is like a very long answer to a quick question, but I would say networking, so you have a good base. And I would say picking up the phone, calling people, even people contact me, send me messages on LinkedIn. I'm in New York, can we get together? I'd love to move to New York. I'd love to work and I'm always trying, like I'll always try and meet people or always try and have a conversation, or at least get back to somebody on email, because it's just that one person that you need to advocate for you when a position comes up, and then you're in.
That's brilliant. I'm going to come back in 1 second because there's a brilliant question that's just come in about how you network, but I might ask that to you all in a second. But Declan, I've one for you. Before you were in your current role, what were you working in previously?
Before I became an independent business arts, I worked in financial services for most of my career. Worked in marketing, finance, right across all of those areas within finance or within financial services. Prior to that, I was in the private sector, again in finance. And before that, I was in the public service, worked in CIE, My first job was actually in public relations the day after I left school. So I've had a broad mix of experience, and when you go from the public sector to the private sector, it's a massive difference in how they work, how they spend their time. And when you're in the private sector, there is no time only for the work that you're doing. But then when I moved into financial services, that opened up a whole new area of banking, both international, corporate, portfolio management, retail banking. So it's been a long and winding road, which brought me to where I decided to take early retirement. And I didn't have a plan in mind after I took the early retirement. So after a few months, I discovered IADT. And having always had an interest in music and the arts, the degree option that came to me happened to be in IADT. But I must say that the further education colleges were a great help, because the local further education college in Blackrock is where I went in initially to do arts management, or arts administration as it was called. And that 1 year in Blackrock further education, with my results from that, I was able to skip a year and go into IADT to finish off my degree. So I would encourage anybody who probably hasn't decided what they want to do, the further education colleges can be a link into IADT and likewise other technological universities. So the question was, what was I doing before I started what I was doing now? Yeah, that was basically it in a nutshell. I don't want to bore everybody with all the particulars, but I just found that those years experience enabled me to initially try and set up on my own, brand myself initially as me, as opposed to working for some other employer. And I find that, as has been mentioned by Michelle there, networking, I think, is key to anybody starting out in career. Now, I would take networking probably a little bit further, in that today's current crop of students will be social media savvy, and likewise the LinkedIn, which I'm on and I enjoy it very well, but networking in the personal context as well. And just to take that a little bit further, networking is about, okay, meeting people, meeting contacts. But to do that, I found when I started out my own, I needed to join some organizations within the industry. So I looked around, and of course, with the help of my degree in IADT, I got to figure out who was doing what within arts and culture in Ireland. And just to name one or two, it was Business to Arts, who are quite a very big organization working in Dublin. And what they try to do is they try to link business with the arts. And they get involved with cloud funding, and they work with the higher corporate organizations to try and see, can they help artists within the industry. I also joined the National Concert Hall. I joined the European Network Project Managers, which is a European organization where within the arts and culture, if organizations or indeed artists in Ireland wish to link up with the European counterparts, they can do that. And there's funding available for them if they link up with an organization outside of Ireland. So that opened up, and by being in those organizations and attending meetings, attending training programs that they organized, I even joined the Wheel, which is a very well-known charity organization. And the benefits I got from the Wheel was that even though it wasn't arts specific, they had a huge amount of training programs which they ran throughout the year I was there, covering all of the areas within working for not-for-profits and for charitable organizations. So in terms of networking, I feel how you get networking is on LinkedIn, number one, but to go out in person, go to training programs, go to meetings, meet people, and you really have to shake hands and have your business card and introduce yourself. And that's the old school from my point of view, and I think it still works.
Declan, you anticipated my follow-up question, which was going to be, how do each of you network, and what are the kind of opportunities for it? But I would say myself, kind of that, you know, a lot of graduates, myself being a humanities graduate as well, we're not always that confident about networking. And like, I totally agree. I think the big challenge I faced when I came out was realizing you have to meet people, and it really does have to be in person. So I might ask Michelle and Eamonn about how you network. What are your networking styles and recommendations, and what do you think the opportunities for it are in your areas as well?
Yeah, I love what Kevin said, or Declan said. I think that it's so true. Yes, you can be on social media and send copy and paste and send messages to people all day long and blow up their inboxes, but I just think there's nothing better than meeting people in person. And I think if you decide what area you want to work in, and then figure out where you need to go, like I would be at shows all the time. I would be like any show that was coming up, I would be in Doyle's every Tuesday night, queuing up to get in, trying to meet people who organized that event. How do, you know, down around Dame Street, where are their shows on? Where should I be? Trying to meet like artists, bands, managers, whoever it was, just to try and get in front of them. Again, Michael Murphy was a huge help. He was the music management. Shout out to Michael Murphy. He was the music management lecturer when I was there, and was a great supporter, and definitely put me in front of people that I wouldn't have met in the past. And when I actually left IADT, I started my own music management company, and would not have done that only for he told me, why can't you do it? You should just do it. Because again, you know, to Eamonn's point, when I finished and graduated, I'm like, okay, what do I do now? I think going to events, going to as many networking events, looking up, like one of the things I did when I was in Ireland was I did the Music Industry Explained course that Hot Press used to run. And I was living in Cork, and I took the bus to Dublin every Tuesday night for 2 hours to do this course, and then stayed with a friend and took the bus back to Cork in the morning. And that's how, you know, again, going back to like just how much do you want how much do you want it? And from that, I ended up getting a job at Hot Press the following year. And I worked as a marketing intern in the office while I was at IADT. Like that simple 8-week course got me a job, which ended up working at Hot Press, which ended, you know, I'm still friends with everybody at Hot Press, worked on multiple conferences and panels at the RDS over the years. So here I'm always at shows. That's part of my job. I always meet people at shows, at events. We go for dinner, we do whatever, we drink in New York. But I, again, go back to what Declan said, even getting things done, not only networking, but getting into the habit of picking up the phone. Like, I'm not saying cold calling people because that's just annoying, but scheduling a call with somebody to have a 10 or 15 minute conversation. There's just no social media that can replace that connection that you make with somebody. So look up your events calendar and see what's coming up, and try and go to things and meet people. Even the farmers market in Dunleary, I ended up trying to find out who was organizing the farmers market, and I went and I stalked her, and I ended up working with her at Festival of World Cultures.
Thanks, Michelle. That's brilliant. Eamonn.
So I'm quite passionate about networking, right? I became passionate about networking when I really understood what it was. At the moment, kind of, we just hear about network, but to somebody who doesn't understand networking, networking is about generating opportunities. It really boils down to the kind of the harsh lesson that we all know about now. Opportunities aren't necessarily given to you based on merit. It's not what you know, it's who you know. That happens a lot. Okay, and people get jobs because of relationships that they have, rather than them being the best qualified person. We know, and we've seen this happen over time. Okay, so we have to kind of tackle that if we know that's a reality. Okay, how do I get to know people? If I don't know people, how do I get to know them? You get to know them through networking. Yeah, and networking is essentially getting to know people. It is difficult, of course, because socially, and especially after the last 2 years, we're not used to talking to people. And if you're a new graduate after 2 years working behind computers, very hard to get out in person, be comfortable. The only thing I have to say about that is with practice, it does get better. I've had lots of awkward moments in networking where I've gone to networking events and tried to present myself over 60 seconds to people and sat down going red in the face thinking I've just embarrassed myself, when in reality I hadn't at all. It's just something that I had to get used to doing, and it does help you. Networking over time actually benefits you in public speaking and becoming used to talking in groups. Also the thing about networking, so it's not just about letting people know that, look, you're there, you're alive, you have these skills, how may I be of use to you? When you get to know people, networking doesn't necessarily mean just targeting people who you think may be of use to you because they work in a certain industry or whatever. I treat and I get to know people. What I'm considering when I get to know them, it's not just about getting them into my network. I think about it over multiple tiers. I think about it, okay, I add them to my network, and then that's another person from my network. I think about it in a way, if I get to them and I get them interested in me, I actually become part of their network and opened up to their entire network, okay, which could be 100 or 200 people. So if I make a good enough impression with that one person, they may become a point of referral for me to other people. It's this whole idea of the 6 degrees of separation, which is actually more likely, in the digital age now, it's more likely 2 degrees of separation because everybody knows somebody who knows them. So you just treat it better like that. Yeah, but networking doesn't start off easy, but with practice and when you see the benefits that come from it, it does become easier and very useful to you.
And I think as well, being authentic, just being like authentic, like you can't go in and meet somebody and you wouldn't do this in your normal life, but you can't go in and meet somebody and be like, well, I want this from you. So, we're going to be buddies now. So I think if you're just your authentic self and you genuinely have the willingness to learn and understand who this person is.
Like if you're going to be really focused on networking, you don't have to like everybody you're networking with. You really don't. You just have to be professional. Because sometimes you can put off talking to people because you're thinking, actually, they really annoy me. But by doing that and parking them, you may be parking potential future opportunity. So there is an element of it's networking is very smart. And by the way, the people you're networking with, you can be authentic. But networking professionally tends to, there tends to be something that it's expected that it happens both ways. People don't accept, well, I'm here to get everybody else opportunities. They tend to do it because it will be rewarded. It will come back in the future. So it's just about understanding what it is and working smart with it,
And I suppose sort of following on from this is a great question we have in, which is about CVs and following on from networking, being authentic, but also going back as well to something you said, Eamonn, about having to be strategic about your CV. One thing that's really important for someone who's just about to graduate or who just has graduated is how to identify what are the most important skills that you get from your degree and how to show them and put them in the CV. So not everyone is going to want to know, well, I did a presentation on XYZ for this class. So how do you translate that work into skills, employers and businesses and opportunities for yourself?
I think with regards to that, yes, no, one CV does not fit all. It's not that you spend time doing one CV and think you just start throwing it out there and that it's really industry specific. If my advice, simple piece of advice for doing CVs, if there's a job that you want, marry it up with the job spec. If somebody is considering to give a job spec, you write the CV based around the job spec that they're giving for the requirements for the job. Simple as, have them beside each other and try and tackle as many points as you can. You have to be a little bit creative sometimes in CVs. You're not lying, you're just being a little bit creative because, what Richard Branson said, sometimes you get the job and learn while you're being paid to do it, because you can't know everything about every job. Yeah.
And Declan, did you want to come in on that one?
Yes, I would agree with Eamonn. I think CVs have to be suited to the position or the job that you're looking for. But you have to be careful with CVs, because I know from my many years' experience, CVs don't tend to get looked at when they arrive where they do arrive. And nowadays they seem to arrive in an email box. And you can imagine the person who is receiving so many CVs, that how do you know that your CV has been opened and looked at? And if it has been opened and if it has been looked at, it'll probably be done within less than 1 minute, which means that the CV, certainly from the first maybe 1, 2, 3, 4 lines, has to attract the interest of the person before they go and read the rest of it. But CVs, I think, we can't just rely everything onto the CV. I think it's got to be more of it's about you and the job that you're going for, and it has to be succinct and abbreviated to that the person reading it knows that you are a potential person to be interviewed for this job. If it gets too technical in the CV, that dates and all the things you did, and as you say, Kevin, the fact that you probably in your degree did an assignment on whatever it may be, it could have been independent theatre in Dublin, and you produced a fantastic paper, they're not really interested in that. You can talk about that if you get to the interview, but I just think CVs have to be really narrow, succinct, and to the point. But it's to get them read. But with the CV, I think there has to be a follow-up. It's not all about a CV dropping into a mailbox. I think, like Michelle is saying, you have to find out who is the person in the organization that is looking or will look at the CV. Is there another contact in the organization that you know that you can ring and say, by the way, I've sent an email into HR. Is there any chance you could have a word with the person who may be looking at it? So there's a huge amount of follow-up. And I think we all tend to send CVs off to so many different organizations. We hear nothing back and we think, oh, I'm a failure. You're not a failure. It's just that the person that you needed to get to, it didn't get to them and they didn't open it in their email box. That's just my view on CVs.
Thanks, Declan. And Michelle, I might give you the very last word on this, because I know we're a little bit pushed for time, but what's your impression of this?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I think that if you analyze a job description and this is the job you really want, I definitely think you do have to frame your CV around what they're looking for. I think also a great cover letter goes a long way. I think that if you really want to work for a company, and if you can try and, I mean, it is a lot easier now to do research. If you can research something that the company is struggling with or has a challenge with, and even propose one idea that you have of how you're going to help them solve that problem. I mean, I think pitching that in a cover letter of like, I've done the research, I love your company, this is what I think I can do to help you with your CV, and then absolutely hounding them after to find out if they got it. Like, again, sending people messages on LinkedIn, emailing HR, trying to find a phone number to call somebody just to follow up to make sure they got your resume. I know, even speaking to friends here trying to get jobs, it's super frustrating at the moment because there are so many people looking for staff and there are so many people applying for jobs. So I guess it's trying to figure out what that thing is that is going to make you stand out from the masses when you're going out applying for jobs.
Brilliant. Okay, well, thanks, Michelle, and thanks everyone for your contributions today. It's been really interesting, and I hope we've been able to answer everyone's questions and give everyone a picture of what it's like to be a humanities graduate and go out into the world. So thanks everyone for joining us, and I hope you have a lovely day.